I'm Major Susie Erickson with the Salvation Army, and I am so excited today to have Colonel Susan Buckowitz with me in the studio. And today we're talking about Chapter 1 of Barefoot Cinderellas, and it's the story of my birth, and the title is Born for a Purpose. And Colonel, it's so good to have you with us today.
Thank you, Susie. It's a pleasure to be here.
I have the privilege of working with you every day in ministry to women. And this story, while it really is relevant for everyone, I think that it's really a story about women walking the journey of life together.
Right.
And this first chapter talks about the story of my birth and the journey that my mother took in having her seventh baby.
It's a remarkable story.
Well, and you come from a large family as well, with lots of sisters just like me. I have 4 sisters, so 5 girls, and there were two boys in our family. But you come from a long line of sisters as well.
I do. In fact, my father and his brother had 5 sisters. And then in my family, there are 5 girls. We don't have any brothers, which is probably a good thing. I think we would have killed any brothers we had.
We tried to kill ours a few times, and I tell about some of those in the book.
Yeah.
But there's something about going through life with sisters. No one really understands your story quite like your sisters.
True.
And what I've discovered is my sisters, through all of this, have become my best friends in life. And they understand parts of our story that perhaps no one else could.
Right.
But what I've really gained from that in ministry to women is really what we share as a sisterhood, where we walk alongside women through every circumstance of their life.
Right.
And in this story, my mother really went through quite a journey. I was baby number 7, and she had numerous health challenges throughout her pregnancy. She ended up having a major operation, and in the recovery time, the hospital released her a little too soon. And when she stood up to be discharged from the hospital, the incision busted. So here she ended up back in the hospital, and she laid there for days before any further medical attention was given to her.
Right.
And while she was in the hospital, she could really smell the infection setting in. And she knew she was in trouble medically. And so when they brought in another team of experts and specialists for that in that day, 1966, they rushed her back in emergency surgery to remove all of this infection. And they gave her the strongest antibiotics that were available at that time. And so when she came through that, the doctors told her, we feel like you will survive, but we don't believe the baby's going to survive this. And if the baby does, there will be great health challenges. And so here my mom was. She had 6 children at home, an alcoholic husband, a son who was following in the footsteps of his father as an alcoholic. And now she has this incredible worry and fear upon her of what is life going to be like with a handicapped child.
Yeah.
So you're in that place of you desperately want the child you're carrying, but you just know you can't handle any more stress. And so many women in our society, they carry that type of burden. They have this deep love for their family, but they carry these deep, heavy burdens upon their shoulders.
Right.
Have you experienced that as well?
Oh, yeah. And as a little girl, I was one of the firstborn. I say it was 1.5 because I have a twin sister, and Cindy and I are the oldest. And my parents were Salvation Army officers, hard-working Corps officers, always. And they had 3 other girls in close succession. So the 5 of us were pretty close in age. We still are close in age. And knowing and seeing how hard my parents worked. And my mother could do absolutely anything. She was phenomenal. And if you knew her, you would say she was a saint. And she really was. But she had a lot on her shoulders, 5 little girls, 5 mouthy little girls to take care of and to try to integrate into a family ministry. And it wasn't easy. I had sister number 4, had severe health issues with her lungs, and she still does. The Lord spared her life over and over again. But even during those days of our childhood, we knew with illnesses among the sisters, my baby sister had scarlet fever. All those things weighed very heavily on my mom, who had the bulk of responsibility for the household as well as her full-time ministry.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, my mother went throughout this pregnancy not knowing that the child within her wasn't going to cause even greater burden on this household that really was already in a crisis situation. Mm-hmm. And so the last month of her pregnancy, the baby stopped moving. Just she felt nothing. And so she went back to the doctor the entire month of that pregnancy. Every time she would go, week after week, they had put a kind of an X mark on her stomach to identify the last place they had heard the heartbeat. And no heartbeat. Wow. Nothing for an entire month. And so here she is, with this emotional battle of, I want this child, but I don't want any more pain and suffering.
Right.
And so when she went into labor, went to the hospital, and they rushed her in. And I want to just read for you an excerpt from this chapter. Rufus paced the floor in the waiting room, expecting the worst, but hoping for the best. He loved babies and was excited to know Bessie was pregnant. When they bought their home, he said he hoped they had a child to look out each window. This baby would fulfill his heart's desire. The doctor dashed all hopes. Bessie is in labor, but we still cannot find a heartbeat. This will be a stillborn birth as expected. It's going to be a while. Get a bite to eat, and the ordeal will be over by the time you get back. The nurse rushed through the door. Doctor, come quickly. Through the haze of his hangover, Rufus tried to understand what was happening. Behind the doors of the delivery room, he thought he heard the muffled cry of a baby. Meanwhile, the nurses helped Bessie birth the baby. Bessie exhaled all that was in her small frame with one final push. The pain of labor was rewarded by the dawn of a new life. Yes, a new life. Against all odds, a healthy baby girl took her first breaths, not by a father's will, but by God's will.
Right.
I had heard that story of my birth over and over my entire life growing up. Every year on my birthday, my mother told the story about how that month before, she stopped feeling any movement in her womb. And she left out the colorful parts about my father's alcoholism. But she, every year she told me that story. But do you know, it did not really register in my mind until my 50th birthday that I wasn't supposed to be here.
Wow.
That the doctors had said this child is either going to be stillborn or is going to be physically handicapped.
Wow.
For her entire life.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I came to realize that I was born for a purpose, that God had placed me on this earth for a purpose. And I truly believe that about every baby that is born. And you have quite a unique story about your birth as well, right?
Well, of course, this was way, way back in 1958. when my mom discovered she was pregnant. And it was a normal pregnancy. Everything was going well, but she was feeling kicks and nudges all over her abdomen. And as the months went by, she would go to her checkups with her doctor in despair and wondering if she was having a monster. In fact, she told her doctor that she thought she was having a monster because this baby could not possibly have as many appendages as she was feeling. So the doctor, in order to, help her feel better, took an x-ray. What they didn't know was that somehow my mom's x-ray got mixed up with another expectant mother's. And when the x-ray came back, the doctor called my mom and said, Alberta, you just need to know you are only having one baby. So that was a weird thing for the rest of my mom's pregnancy with her first baby, feeling all of these strange things and thinking within herself that something was not right. And the day her water broke, my dad likes to tell the story that he ran down the stairs and picked up the phone and called my mom's doctor and said, Alberta's water broke. I'm bringing her to the hospital right now. And the doctor said, well, John, be sure you tell her that she's having twins.
Oh, no.
And we found her x-ray. She's having twins. So my dad says he ran back up the stairs, said to my mom, Berta, we're having twins, and ran back down the stairs and caught the phone in midair.
Oh, my goodness.
That was the urban legend in our family. So the weird thing about that is, of course, my parents wanted a boy, firstborn boy, and his name would be John Robert, after my father. But the thought of having a girl, they could not decide on a name for the girl. And my mom wanted Cindy, and my dad wanted Susan. And they just could not decide. So when they had two girls, Mom got her wish, Dad got her wish, and Dad got his wish. And, that's how it worked out. It was great.
So they ended up with a Cindy and a Susan after all.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he never got his little boy, right?
Never got his little boy. But we made life interesting enough for my dad. Yeah.
There's quite a lot of girl drama that goes on in a house with 5 daughters.
Oh, I'm telling you. And, in most of our officers' quarters that we lived in, there was just one bathroom.
Yes.
Maybe 3 bedrooms, maybe. But I remember many times the 5 of us sleeping in one room and my mom and dad in another room. And we had one bathroom. And when my mom and dad retired, we got him a plaque that said, Heaven has a special place for the father of daughters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially, you should have had engraved on the bottom, especially with one bathroom.
Yeah.
We had one bathroom too, and it was always full of girl stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who can even know the plans and purpose God has for a child when they are conceived? And so many children are conceived in circumstances that just really aren't ideal.
Yeah.
Some of them are born to mothers that weren't expecting a child at all, but yet God has a plan and a purpose for that child.
Right.
And so often we can go through life and, when you come from a large family, sometimes you have you can get lost. Mm-hmm. I have the middle sister who recently confessed that she always wished she was an only child.
Oh,
because, here you are in this big family, you don't feel like maybe you're heard or you're seen. Mm-hmm. I didn't experience that because I was the baby.
Oh, sure.
But of course, others in the family may very well have experienced that. But you can sometimes think that your life doesn't matter and that you're not seen and that you're not heard. Mm-hmm. And what I would want women and children and men to know is that the circumstances of your life may say you were unplanned and unwanted and unloved, but nothing is farther from the truth.
Mm-hmm.
God had holy plans for you when he spoke you into existence.
Right.
Birth is a miracle.
Yeah.
And children are a gift from God.
Mm-hmm.
And the words spoken over Jeremiah are just as true for each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
Before I shaped you in the womb, I knew all about you. Before you saw the light of day, I had holy plans for you. A prophet to the nations, that's what I had in mind for you. And God had plans in mind for us when we were born and when we were conceived. And that day that he breathed life into me in that small town hospital, when everybody around thought that, was preparing for a burial, God had plans for a birth and a life. And that's remarkable that each one of us, he has holy plans for us.
Right. When I would get angry as a girl, and when the life of 4 other sisters, vying for attention, trying to find our own voices, when that just got to be too much for me and I was feeling bratty, I would say to my mom, "You had way too many kids." And she always said, "Well, Susan, would God say the same thing? Would you say the same thing to God? You have way too many kids?" God's got a plan for all of us.
Yes,
And,
he does.
And it's our responsibility to listen to his voice, to find the path he's chosen for us. And he doesn't hide it from us, does he?
No.
He doesn't tease us in that way.
No, and I think that he really, we start to see those plans and purposes even in childhood.
Right.
In the way we play and the way we, the things that we love to do. I was born for hospitality.
Yeah.
From a little girl, I was serving mud pies. Now I think about the people that were on the other end of of the mud pie that they received. I'm sure they were glad when I got the Easy Bake Oven and I actually started bringing something they could eat. But yes, we were born for a purpose.
Right.
And over the next few weeks, as we look at each chapter of Barefoot Cinderellas, we'll be looking at some other Barefoot Cinderellas who have gone through unique journeys throughout their life experience. And there's just this ongoing theme of finding your purpose and knowing that in the midst of your pain and your suffering and what you're going through, that God is there.
Yes.
And that none of it is catching him by surprise.
No.
When my mom was in that hospital room wondering what was going to be of her life and what was going to be of the life of the child in her womb, God was there.
Yeah.
And God had a purpose for her and for that baby, and he has a purpose for each one of you.
That's right.
So if there was a mom out there right now who's expecting and she's received heartbreaking news, what would you say to her?
Oh, what can you say other than trust? Trust the one who knows you. Trust the one who made you. Trust the one who loves you unconditionally. And his plan for your life includes this precious life you're bringing into the world.
Yeah.
His plan encompasses all of it.
Yes.
So embrace his plan. Trust him. He loves you. He knows you. And he will never disappoint you.
And that baby you carry is not a mistake.
Absolutely not.
God placed that child in your life, and God has a holy plan for that baby,
Right.
just as he has for you.
Yeah.